How's it going, my busy bakers? Hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome back to another video. Today we're making a brioche tart, so let's get in the kitchen and get started. This tart was inspired by the French Saint Tropez Tart. It is a classic cake made with brioche dough and usually filled with pastry cream and buttercream. The version I'm going to show you today is easier to make and no less delicious. Instead of 2 fillings, we'll stick to 1. We'll make diplomat cream. We'll make it easier without gelatin. We will soak the brioche inside and out with syrup made with fresh orange juice. The resulting tart is light and flavorful and looks great too. And because it's made with my no-knead brioche base, it will take very little skill to accomplish. So let's get right to it. Let me show you how it's done. Starting with the ingredients. For the brioche dough, we'll need white bread flour, yeast, salt, butter, sugar and eggs. And yes, all the liquid in brioche dough is made up of egg. As for the equipment, we'll need a tart case measuring around 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters, but you can easily survive without it. We'll also need a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush, a whisk. We'll need a fine grater for the orange zest and a rolling pin for rolling out the dough. And we'll need a small pan for cooking the filling and the syrup. Let's start by making the dough. It all begins with temperature control. My kitchen was around 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit, so I left the eggs to sit at room temperature for a while to warm them up a bit. We are making a large portion of dough, so I'm using my largest mixing bowl. Pour the eggs in the bowl, add the yeast, the salt, the sugar, and give them a good mix. Now it can be pretty difficult to incorporate such a huge amount of butter in bread dough, especially when we are not kneading the dough, as I'm going to demonstrate here. So I came up with this technique a while ago, which I actually borrowed from cake making. We'll add some of the flour before adding the butter, around 8 heaped tablespoons or around 200 grams. Then we're going to whisk it to a smooth paste, and only then add the butter and whisk it in. It's much easier to whisk the butter into a thick paste like this. Once you have whisked in the butter, add the remaining flour and grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. This is a large amount of dough, but for this recipe we only require half of it. Whenever I'm making brioche, I always make a double batch. I use half for one project and half for another. And you can do the same, or you can make half the recipe, it's up to you, or whatever you do. After you've mixed up your dough, place it in a clean bowl and give it a quick temperature check. If it turns out a little bit cool, let it sit at room temperature between folds. But if it's in the correct temperature range, you can stick it in the fridge right away. Around 23 to 25 degrees Celsius is perfect, which is 73 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll cover the dough up and leave it in the fridge to rest for 30 minutes. The gluten will start slowly developing during this time, and the dough will start cooling down. After 30 minutes of chilling, we can pull it out of the fridge and give it its first fold. Dust dough generously with flour, release it from the bowl, drop it out on the table with the smooth side down, then flatten it out and fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, place it back into the bowl, and then back into the fridge for another 30 minutes of chilling. Brioche is usually cold fermented. It makes it easier to handle and also improves the flavor. You could ferment it at room temperature, but it would be a lot more difficult. So just plan it ahead and do it in the fridge like it should be done. Okay, after another 30 minutes of chilling, we can pull the dough back out and give it its second fold. Fold it exactly the same way as previously. It should start feeling a little bit tighter now. After the second fold, we need to chill it down one more time. What follows next depends on what you're planning to do. You can either leave the dough in one piece and double the whole recipe, in which case you should give it one more fold. Or you can do what I'm going to do and split the dough in half and use it for 2 projects. In which case you should weigh it, divide it in 2, and then shape it in rounds. Shaping works exactly the same as folding, so I'm not going to repeat that rhyme one more time. After shaping, wrap the dough balls in cling film, leave a little bit of space for them to expand, and place them in the fridge for the long cold fermentation of around 18 to 24 hours. It is the next day. Let's see what ingredients we'll need to turn this dough into a delicious tart. For the filling, we'll need some milk, sugar, an egg, cornstarch, orange zest, vanilla paste, and some double cream or heavy cream. We'll need 1 more egg for glazing, some pearl sugar for topping, and we'll need some more white sugar and some orange juice for the syrup. Now I said that we need milk. Obviously that's not milk in the top left corner, that's double cream. That's just there for illustration purposes. I didn't have milk on the day of recording. Anyway, let's move on to making the custard. In a small pan, combine the sugar, the cornstarch, the egg, the orange zest, the vanilla paste, and the milk. Whisk it all up, set it on medium to high heat, and cook it whilst whisking continuously for around 3 minutes. Once it becomes thick, it's ready, and as soon as it thickens, take it off the heat and transfer it to a bowl. Cover it up with some cling film so that it's touching the surface. It will prevent the skin from forming. Once it's all wrapped up, place it in the fridge to cool down completely. Let's move on to preparing the brioche. Grab a dough ball out the fridge, unwrap it, dust it with flour, and then roll it out to the size of the tart case. But like I said earlier, you don't really need the tart case, but if you have one, use it. It will ensure that the tart is perfectly round. This dough will not be very sticky, so I didn't line my tart case and I didn't even brush with butter or anything. Okay, we can move on to final proofing. Cold brioche dough takes a while. It took me around 2.5 hours. You can place it in a warmer area to speed it up, but I wasn't in a rush, so I just left it be. You want to preheat the oven during the final hour of fermentation. 170 Celsius, 340 Fahrenheit, fan on, or 190 Celsius, 375 Fahrenheit, fan off. Once the timer is up and the dough looks nice and puffy, we can move on to glazing it. To give it an extra rich crust, we'll go with the double glazing technique. So brush the surface with egg once, then leave it to dry for 5 minutes, and then brush it again. This will deepen the color of the crust as it bakes, and it helps us get the most out of our egg too. After brushing, add the topping. And if you don't have pearl sugar, you can use regular sugar. Right, this baby is ready for the oven, so let's get it in there. It'll take around 20 minutes to fully bake. You want to start preparing the orange syrup a couple minutes before the bread comes out of the oven. So once it's almost fully baked, grab a small pan, combine the orange juice and the sugar, place the pan on high heat and bring it up to a boil. It should take no more than 2 minutes. Once the sugar has melted and the mix is bubbling, it's ready. Now grab the tart out the oven, and as soon as it comes out, brush it generously with the hot sugar syrup. Give it at least 2 coats, and reserve the rest of the syrup. We'll use it for brushing the inside of the tart. Now leave it to cool down for at least half an hour, otherwise you'll ruin the inside as you cut it open. Once it has cooled down, you can carefully slice it in half. And then be extra careful when you take the top off, you don't want to rip the bread. Now open it up and soak it using the remaining syrup. And be generous here, use all of it. It will make the tart extra moist and it will add an extra delicious orange flavor. Okay, once the tart is soaked, leave it on the side. Let's move on and turn the custard into diplomat cream. Grab a large bowl, drop the whipping cream in it and whip it up until it's nice and stiff, but don't over whip it. Now leave it on the side, grab the custard from the fridge and whisk it until it's nice and smooth. And finally, combine the custard with the whipped cream and whisk them until they are completely combined. You can easily spoon this mix in the tart and spread it out using a spatula, but I have piping bags, so I'm going to use one. Right, there's just one thing left to do. Let's assemble this thing. I placed the bottom part of the bread back into the tart case, just to make my job easier. Pipe the filling or spread the filling evenly all over the surface. Then take the top half of the brioche and carefully place it on the filling. After you have placed it down, press it in with the palms of your hands. You want the filling to catch on to the bread. Right now the filling is a little bit soft. It will be much easier and less messy to cut if we refrigerate the tart first. So pop it in the fridge for a couple of hours to set. You can even leave it overnight, it's up to you. But there you go, that's how you make a beautiful brioche tart. It has a very nice and light texture, it is very soft, it's nice and moist thanks to the syrup and the filling, and the delicious orange flavor really comes through. It looks impressive, and the best part, it was super easy to make. So go ahead and get your ingredients ready.